A fiery message that's hard to miss.
Police are tonight hunting an arsonist who targeted the home of controversial FriendlyJordies YouTube blogger Jordan Shanks.
FriendlyJordies, a man with an unwavering commitment to what he believes is true. Despised by some, but considered a hero by many, the story of FriendlyJordies is chaotic.
Surprise sticks!
From fighting federal lawsuits against some of Australia's most powerful political figures.
Last week, John Barilaro filed to sue, and it appears that he gave all the juicy details to the press.
Uploading comedic analysis of the latest maths episode.
He looks like one of those clowns in the Easter show that you put balls in to win a fucking inflatable elephant.
To now exposing the dealings of the country's criminal underworld. Let's take a look at how this once skit-making satirical uni student rose to YouTube stardom, and how his persistent quest for transparency and accountability almost cost himself his life.
This man is one of the best journalists in the state as far as I'm concerned, and this is his payday. Someone's trying to kill him.
We start in Sydney, Australia, where FriendlyJordies aka Jordan Shanks Markovina grew up to Scottish and Croatian parents. Outside a 2-year period living in Coffs Harbour, Jordan spent most of his time in Sydney's inner city, where he lived with separated parents. His childhood could be described as lower middle class, with much of his childhood spent with his mother, who was on a disability pension, and some of his later childhood with his father, who was a builder. FriendlyJordies attended Newtown High School of the Performing Arts, where he described himself as a bit of a dropkick who enjoyed video games. Although not particularly invested in his studies, Jordan was drawn to performing from an early age. A class clown in school, Jordan was unafraid of the public eye, participating in stage performances from the age of 5. It would be comedy that particularly appealed to Jordan, who would perform stand-up comedy to live audiences throughout his high school years, winning local and state comedic competitions. With his academics an afterthought, by year 11, FriendlyJordies knew he had to get serious, putting an emphasis on his studies, ultimately being accepted to the University of New South Wales, where he took on a degree in international politics. Whilst in university, FriendlyJordies' passion for comedy and self-improvement far exceeded his love for politics. Picking up his first Tony Robbins book at 18, Jordan described the book as life-changing, developing an obsession for self-improvement, which he used to focus into other interests like modelling. As a part-time model, Jordan worked for companies such as Sprite, Gucci and Topman in countries like South Korea, Japan, Indonesia and Australia.
My personal favourite 2 photos from that is Boss and as fierce as Beyonce.
With it just a way to make money on the side, Jordan spent much of his time at the University of New South Wales in the library studying comedic theory or hosting the ARC podcast for the university. In 2012, podcasting was niche, and with Jordan setting his sights on becoming a famous radio host, it seemed like the perfect way to break into the industry. This interest in radio diminished as Jordan understood the complexity of breaking into a platform of media that was slowly dying. Jordan would finish his degree in international politics with no intentions on becoming a bureaucrat or a radio host, and after bouncing around various office jobs, Jordies ended up on government welfare and knew he needed to pivot. Jordan spent years performing to live audiences as a kid, intensively read and researched comedy, and learnt the inner workings of politics through university. He knew he had the knowledge and skills to showcase, but where?
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the UNSWR podcast for the 2nd edition.
The video sharing platform YouTube had arose as the pioneer for new media. By 2013, it had become a viable source of income for many creators, and Jordan saw this as an opportunity. Inspired by early YouTube stars like Neil Kolhatkar and Natalie Tran, who had quickly built devoted audiences, Jordan would create the FriendlyJordies YouTube channel in February of 2013. Much of FriendlyJordies' early work consisted of skits comedically critiquing Australian culture and shared life experiences.
I'm not even crying because me team lost. John Obawade's got his fingers in me back. Good.
In 480p, Jordan played characters with different wigs and accents with a sarcastic and satirical undertone, and although visually rough around the edges, he slowly grew an audience. By March of 2014, the channel had grew to 50,000 subscribers, with the catalyst of that growth being the Chronicles of Yilmaz series and basically making fun of Aussie culture in general.
So I said, alright boys, bring out your guns. And we oozed off 50 of them. True story, bruh.
The stories of his former schoolmate Yilmaz became an instant classic within the YouTube community, and although initially solely focused on comedy, FriendlyJordies would slowly incorporate Australian political commentary onto the channel as well. From videos on shark culling and carbon tax to how to live it up in Bali, Jordies' content was abstract, although somewhat consistent. His eccentric videos on Aussie culture brought the casual viewer in, whilst the political analysis on the country's biggest issues led some of them to stay. This winning formula of entertainment and information grew both his YouTube and Facebook accounts to 100,000 followers just over 2 years later. He had become a hit with the Australian youth, providing an alternative for political content to the mainstream media outlets, challenging both Australia's political and media landscape. His content was seen as informative and important by his viewer base, but was still glossed over by many. His crude humour and unconventional characters and personas used to entertain viewers was jarring to some and allowed mainstream media outlets to label him as nothing more than just a shock jock. With his videos, 21st birthdays in Australia and nightclubs in Australia being some of his biggest at the time, you can see why many refused to take him seriously. From 2017 to 2019, Jordan continued to produce content, growing over 200,000 subscribers and 40 million views across the channel. His unapologetic advocacy against media bias and political corruption could no longer be ignored, as he went from an afterthought to a genuine disruption to the Australian media landscape. Australia's media heavyweights, Fairfax Media and News Corp, took aim at Jordies with hit pieces throughout this period. No Aussie TV corporations were spared either, with wacky, fierce but articulate rebuttal, which not only strengthened his relationship with his audience but further grew his viewership. FriendlyJordies had challenged all the established media structures in the country repeatedly on his channel, but the question remained, what was FriendlyJordies' endgame? Was it to call out the failures of others purely for personal acclaim? Although by no means rich, he was undoubtedly seeing some of the monetary reward that comes with YouTube stardom. Leveraging his success, Jordan had already been touring Australia since 2016 with a live comedy stand-up show mixing his political and comedic background, which would sell incredibly well across the country. This, combined with merchandise sales, YouTube ad revenue, and Patreon memberships, would evolve the FriendlyJordies channel from an amateur enterprise to a well-oiled machine. So what was FriendlyJordies' why? Was this centered around pushing his own agenda, for his personal monetary benefit, or a noble attempt at genuine investigative journalism to inform the Australian public? Up against genuine conflict, would FriendlyJordies crumble, or was he standing on business?
Well, yeah, you standing on business. You standing on business.
Between 2019 and 2023 is where we saw the true rise of the FriendlyJordies empire. By mid-2019, the FriendlyJordies channel was nearing the 300,000 subscriber mark and would continue to churn out videos. Jordan would release the video Australia's Trump, Clive Palmer.
Oh, interesting. And what exactly do you like about Clive?
He's gonna run this country like he runs his business, mate.
What? Into liquidation?
No, not his nickel operations, the rest of it.
A deconstruction of Palmer's wrongdoing, such as the liquidation of his nickel refinery, which Aussie taxpayers had to pay for, his hypocritical anti-Chinese sentiment when he had already previously partnered with their government, and his predatory campaign tactics. For returning viewers, this was just another stock standard satirical critique for the upcoming 2019 Australian election, and would amass over 100,000 views. This was an average viewership return for FriendlyJordies at the time, and although not great publicity for Palmer, the video would have most certainly been forgotten shortly after. Unlike many others who ignored the FriendlyJordies channel in fear of further damaging their image, Clive Palmer would threaten to sue Jordan for defamation, stating that the labels of
"A fatty McFuckhead"
and "dense Humpty Dumpty" said in the video had caused him extreme embarrassment and humiliation. Palmer would demand $500,000 worth of damages and for Jordan to remove the video. With expensive legal fees and a date in the Supreme Court against one of Australia's richest men looming, FriendlyJordies would not only respond but double down with a video labelled Fatty. In what was most likely an attempt by Palmer to silence the YouTuber, he had created the Streisand effect, the unintended consequence of attempts to hide, remove or censor information, where the effort instead backfires by increasing public awareness of the information. The video would comically highlight Palmer's court documents and further explore his misconducts.
When he not only denied this country hundreds of billions of dollars from resources that are its birthright, but then on top of that, demanded billions more from us to build infrastructure for him. To move our coal to Australia's most treasured and emblematic natural wonder, loaded onto 10,000 ships and then dragged over its fragile, brittle carcass, where it will then be burned into the atmosphere to advance the economies of countries we're not aligned with. What part of that equation would suggest to any rational being that Clive Frederick Palmer puts his personal and business interests ahead of the rest of the countries when the very name of that mine is China first?
And I've never moved any assets offshore.
What he actually means by that is, he has, including an attempt to move his flagship corporation Mineralogy to New Zealand in order to take advantage of a trade agreement loophole so that he could sue the Australian public for $45 billion.
The 26-minute rebuttal has now amassed 1.9 million views, becoming the most viewed video on the channel at the time, receiving global press and formed the Fatty McFuckhead meme, which FriendlyJordies released merchandise of. Palmer knew he did not have much of a leg to stand on and would ultimately rescind his lawsuit against FriendlyJordies, ending the beef. The Palmer fiasco would be followed promptly by the 2019-2020 Australian bushfire tragedy, which ultimately led to the deaths of 34 people, including 13 firefighters, the loss of 3,500 homes, and left an estimated 1 billion animals dead. Not only one of the biggest environmental but financial disasters in the country's history, FriendlyJordies would release the video titled "Dear Your Majesty," a passionate critique of the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison's handling of the bushfires and decision to go on holiday.
Scott Morrison, during bushfires so damaging and ongoing that no one has had time to name them yet, went on holiday. In secret. When he was caught, he then lied about coming home early, and when he did, his immediate instinct was to get a photo op with the victims of the bushfire. When they were none too pleased with his presence and asking for his help, he both figuratively and literally turned his back on them. As leader of the AMWU, Bill Shorten coordinated the rescue effort for Beaconsfield and was so flawless in a time of crisis that even Murdoch called for him to be Prime Minister. Kevin Rudd, another man of faith, helped Korean students who couldn't speak English evacuate their building during the Queensland floods. He waded knee-deep through water carrying their bags on his head. This is not a partisan attack. As much as I didn't agree or like Malcolm Turnbull, I could not imagine him taking the course of action, or rather gross inaction, the professional sack of shit Scott Morrison has been taking during this crisis. As much as I curse Tony Abbott's decimation of this nation's public sector, I acknowledge that on a personal level, he is a decent man with a strong sense of civic duty. He's been fighting these fires for months and wanted no press coverage for it. On a personal level, he has contributed more than I or most people watching ever have, and so I would argue that he's at least earned the right to lead. Scott Morrison has not.
This video would receive over 1 million views, with many Australians holding a similar sentiment at the time.
You from the media, tell the Prime Minister to go and get from Nelligan.
Stand down now. You don't deserve to govern. You knew this was coming. It's been coming for a few years. You've been totally ignorant of it.
He would use his platform to raise $130,000 for the animal rescue collective that helps save bushfire-affected wildlife. He would continue with videos condemning the Gladys Berejiklian-led New South Wales government for the 75% budget cuts to the New South Wales Fire Service, the pork barrelling of relief funds to marginal seats unaffected by the bushfires, and the mismanagement of billions of litres of water from the Murray-Darling Basin that led to the death of 1 million fish. This would then prompt the koala killer hashtag, which became synonymous with the New South Wales Premier on the internet, with FriendlyJordies donating a total of $310,000 from shirt and ticket sales from his live shows to the bushfire relief funds. Now, advocacy is one thing, donating is great, but Jordies and his team have shown a repeated willingness to document and travel to the source of issues that don't receive press coverage. His hour-long documentary titled Blood Water, The War for Australians' Water, where Jordan travels to regions affected by water theft and dodgy politician legislation surrounding the Murray-Darling Basin.
Water is a commodity. Water has been decoupled from land in this country, which means anyone can buy water rights. This makes water like a stock. It's tradable. It would naturally flow into the basin, into private dams. This water can be later used for irrigation, usually to irrigate profitable yet water-intensive crops like cotton. This means floodplain harvesters, in theory, can save all their legal entitlements, not using a drop for irrigation, instead treating those water licenses like stocks to speculate on. They can then use the unaccounted floodplain harvested or stolen water to irrigate their cotton, making water scarcer and their licenses, or as I like to call them, stocks, more valuable. Who'd have thought that the drought could be so profitable, eh? If all the water is being taken upstream, nothing is going downstream.
He speaks to locals on their health and financial effects and questions governing officials on the issue. The documentary titled Paradise Bombed is another piece of investigative journalism which covers the often overlooked West Papuan conflict between Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. FriendlyJordies channel producer Christo Lenka travels alongside Indigenous Papuans of the region, showcasing the genuine horrors their people are facing to 1.7 million viewers. His video investigation of the gambling lobby of New South Wales and their alleged non-compliance with anti-money laundering laws would almost cost him his freedom.
This is a story about what happens if you try to take on the pokies lobby.
The original video titled The Legal Way to Take a Life, where Christo Lenka, a producer of the FriendlyJordies channel, interviews the terminally ill Troy Stolz, a former employee and whistleblower of the lobby group, who was unfairly dismissed and countersued for leaking internal documents of the corrupt dealings. This was a ruthless court case which had amounted for $750,000 in fees, which combined with his cancer treatment had Stolz headed for bankruptcy. Facing prosecution once again, now against one of Australia's most powerful lobbying groups, Jordies yet again went further, collaborating with fellow Aussie YouTubers Boy to showcase how simple it was to launder money through the pokies.
Once again, we managed to launder $5,000 and no one cared at all.
Sorry,
Sorry.
This video would amass 3.2 million views, and through their fans, FriendlyJordies and Boy would raise $150,000 for Stoll's legal fees. Jordan's and Stoll's initial allegations were proven correct when over a year later the New South Wales Crime Commission found that the criminals were in fact laundering billions of dollars using poker machines in the state, forcing the lobby group's CEO to be fired and for the court case to be eventually dropped. FriendlyJordies between 2019 and 2023 had proven to many that he was more than just a political shock jock, who was willing to stand on his shield regardless of prosecution or financial damage. What happens though when you dig too far? When the initial lawsuits turn to genuine attempts on you and your loved one's life. This brings us to the clash between FriendlyJordies and then Nationals leader and New South Wales Deputy Premier John Barilaro, where one video snowballed into one of the ugliest and frightening high-profile battles in Australia's history. This was labelled the Bruz saga. A video titled 7 News Humiliates Me would be released on the 19th of June 2020, a video in response to Channel 7's news story on his interview with opposition leader Jody McKay on the Australian bushfires. This video detailed the environmental mismanagement by the New South Wales government at the time, including an exaggerated Italian impression of one of Australia's most powerful politicians in 2020, John Barilaro, who objected on radio of the koala killer hashtag which FriendlyJordies popularised. Impersonations were commonplace on the FriendlyJordies channel, and were seen as relatively harmless. This was not the case for Barilaro, who went to Australia's biggest media publications labelling the impression from Geordie as very offensive and racist. FriendlyJordies would respond with the video, FriendlyJordies is cancelled, emphasising the hypocrisy of the article.
That's what he found unacceptable. Bruz. This coming from the man who wrote the very thought-provoking think piece, political correctness is stifling our energy debate, and then proceeds to stifle the land clearing debate with political correctness, stating, I don't mind taking the mickey out of myself. You seem like it. So upset your tatty was reported nationwide because of an impression of yourself you didn't like.
With the article glossing over the information provided and rather focusing on the impersonation, Jordan would challenge the media to report on the facts, by going a step further with Barilaro animated into Mario whilst information popped up on the screen.
The Brumbies were destroying Kosciuszko National Park, bringing a bunch of endangered species to the brink of extinction. I was going to authorize a call, but then I realized I could make $10,000 in donations by allowing them to destroy the park. Woohoo! I find, quote, actually very offensive. The fact that parasites like you are perfectly happy to wipe out entire native species, not to mention permanently degrade the region whose beauty inspired the man on a $10 bill for just 1,000 of those. So my humour might be cheap, Giovanni, but at least my soul isn't cheap.
This may seem chaotic, but was fairly consistent with the content that FriendlyJordies had published in the past. Collected information of whoever or whatever the topic's alleged misconducts, combined with some edgy humour. This beef would only increase with the release of the video Bruz, a 27-minute deep dive which extensively looks at John Barilaro's political history whilst gallivanting around a housing estate. The video challenges Barilaro's decision regarding the bushfires, water theft, distribution of tax money to marginal electorates, and his conflict of interest.
4 months prior to becoming Regional Tourism Minister, he bought not just a mansion, but an estate, which he decided to let out via Airbnb and stays. It didn't occur to him once to register an Airbnb estate as a potential conflict of interest when shaping the laws surrounding Airbnbs and stays. He and his cronies arguing, Bruz, the estate only makes around 160k a year. Yeah. Just to be 2.5 times the salary of the average Aussie in just one of the investments that he owns, that's all.
It is later revealed that the video isn't being filmed at any housing estate, but in fact,
I'm filming at your estate. Politics is a dirty game. Hey, Barra? Even with my track record of what I've done in your houses, still nowhere near as dirty as what you've done to get them.
Jordan proceeds to leave Mario merchandise around the former Deputy Premier's Airbnb estate in what might be described as the most creative but insane pieces of journalism. This video quickly achieved virality with 1.3 million views and most certainly ruffled a few feathers in both media and politics. Reports of infighting within the New South Wales government came out after the video, resulting in the government implementing a new Koala Protection Act from the backlash. Mainstream TV reluctantly aired news segments on the video, whilst media outlets try to underplay FriendlyJordies' influence, labelling him as just a YouTube comedian, although there was no denying that his independent enterprise was now in direct competition with Australia's biggest media conglomerates. FriendlyJordies continued to press the issue, releasing the videos Secret Dictatorship, The Italian Job, and the satirical Super Barilaro card.
Jordies ended October by releasing his own documentary on the rural town of Narendra, which was controlled by the Nationals at a local level. The sting in the accusation was that Barilaro wanted to block needed infrastructure to force young families to leave and to keep an older demographic that would vote for the Nationals. On top of that, in November, Jordies released The Italian Job, in which he accused Barilaro of using his business Monaro Property to take over Queanbeyan's Marco Polo social club in a dodgy way, running it into the ground but deliberately keeping it in debt, even though locals offered to pay off the debt and then sold the land for a huge profit.
These would only further criticise Barilaro's leadership and would force the former politician to take a month of paid mental health leave. They would receive a letter from Barilaro during this time with a threat to sue for defamation.
Last week, John Barilaro filed to sue, and it appears that he gave all the juicy details to the press. I did not find about it the normal way, which is that you get served a letter.
In what was a repeat of the Clive Palmer situation, Jordies was sued more so for his colourful language rather than the information in the video, a tactic many in power use due to Australia's strict defamation laws. Jordan would reveal in the controversy and welcome the confrontation, uploading the new deleted Bruz Eternal video. It looked like yet another legal battle was yet to take place for Jordan, although this time, things would take an unsettling turn.
No, Mum, you can take my... No, you can take my phone. No, take my phone. Take my phone. Don't do
You assaulted me. You just assaulted me. I've got witnesses.
You can't do this in Australia.
Until recently, I've treated this legal problem with the levity it deserves, but in all honesty, every move I've made, no matter how ridiculous it appeared, has been both legal and considered. I understood that the usual procedure for silencing dissent in a Western democracy is to outspend your opponent, legally or electorally. What I did not realise is that defence is quite literally paper thin. Australia does have its own secret police, and they get sent in very quickly, particularly when the skin is as thin as said paper. On the 4th of June, plainclothes armed officers stormed into my employee's home, violently assaulted his family, nearly killed his dog, pinned him to the ground, handcuffed him, and dragged him into an unmarked police car.
Christo, a producer for the FriendlyJordies channel, would be arrested for stalking by the Counter-Terrorism and Special Tactics Command Fixated Persons Unit. Basically the secret police from his own home. This specialised unit, by the way, was implemented for lone wolf terrorists, not a journalist, and was seen by many as a blatant misuse of power. This sprung outrage globally, with fans and opponents of Jordies saying it was a slap in the face for genuine victims of stalking and that it set a scary precedent for Australia. This video would garner 1.4 million views, and with now 2 legal battles against both the powerful police and the politician, supporters would raise $1 million for a legal fund. These would be used for the defamation case, Lanka's not guilty plea, and the previously mentioned lawsuit against the gambling lobby group, which also occurred during this period. The New South Wales Police would unsuccessfully attempt to ban FriendlyJordies videos for the coverage on the arrest.
Well, because I've been covering the arrest and trial of my employee Christo, the same police force have attempted to throw me in jail for videos. They've been desperate to shut down my coverage of the matter.
The tactics proved fruitless, as their court proceedings only further highlighted the injustices against Jordies' producer. Unable to justify their use of the secret police for a YouTuber for 6 months, and with it bringing to light that Barilaro had in fact been in contact with the Fixated Person Unit prior to the arrest.
Do you ask for the Fixated Persons Investigation Unit to be involved in the arrest of Jordan Shanks' employee, Christo Lanka?
Absolutely not. Rubbish again. Rubbish. You know, they want to pitch it a particular way to get community support from their social community. They use whatever means to misrepresent the truth. And again, I'll leave that up to the police. They'll deal with all of this in due course.
Right, but just to clarify, so you had no role in that particular unit being
Tom, I've already said, I've actually made it clear, Tom. I've said absolutely not. And again, if you to be asking that question, is an indictment on your level of journalism.
They were only inflicting themselves damage, dropping the lawsuit against Lanka and having to pay for the court proceedings. The lawsuit with Barilaro was incredibly ugly. To summarise, FriendlyJordies was required to pay Barilaro's legal fees and adhere to these other stipulations. He would not be required to pay any damages though to Barilaro, although in the separate trial between Google and Barilaro, Google would withdraw all defences against Barilaro and was required to pay $750,000 for hosting the videos. John may have won financially, but his ethics to get to that victory were highly criticised.
So throughout the course of this ordeal, John got away with his chief of staff deliberately ignoring subpoenas, having a police unit surveil us, using police to bring vexatious charges to use as a bargaining chip in a separate civil trial, opposing a jury, hiding hiding behind parliamentary privilege, my great crime has stayed the same throughout this ordeal, which is being an annoying pest to a lot of very powerful people in Australia.
With the use of sneaky tactics like parliamentary privilege, that meant Barilaro's own words in Parliament could not be used against him. He may have won financially. For Jordan though, this was a win, exposing the alleged corrupt dealings of one of the more powerful men in the state. FriendlyJordies' findings would mean Barilaro would have to face investigation from the New South Wales Legislative Council and ICAC, Australia's Independent Commission Against Corruption. It was clear FriendlyJordies was having an impact. But his onslaught of Barilaro would not end there, as even after the lawsuit, he would leak the recording of him boastfully admitting his misdeeds, which received over 1.5 million views on the FriendlyJordies channel.
Now you call it investment on pork barrel. I do appreciate that, as of course pork Barilaro, unbelievable. And then it was like, okay, we're going to fund 25 million. Siobhan, can you fund $25 million? Hey, Peritate. 25 million. Well, I got you 42 million for Muswellbrook Hospital, 11 million for Singleton. There's some little bloody bar at Leicester, Cayuga, or whatever, and then 650,000. And, oh my God. Yeah, and you know what? We'll get to Scone this week. We're going to give them some money for their roads, another $21 million. So, you know what? You're not done yet? Oh, God, no. So the Aboriginal Land Council want to build this big facility. We're going to give them $4 billion too. Why not? Why not? Why not? You can have it all in New South Wales, you can have it all.
Remember, Barilaro just had enforced an entire defamation case against Google and FriendlyJordies for alleging he was pork barreling, only for this recording to be leaked of John labelling himself as pork Barilaro, whilst boastfully elaborating on himself pork barreling. Kinda insane. This only strengthened FriendlyJordies' journalistic integrity with the public.
That's John pondering, I don't know why my opponents just don't make up the numbers like I do. Hell yeah! The guy that got $700,000 in reparations for the great injustice he suffered of being called a con man and a liar.
The mainstream media would jump on board questioning the politician over his battle with the Anti-Corruption Committee after he allegedly created a dodgy $500,000 tax-funded job that he knew he would fill before leaving his deputy premier role, which resulted in this.
For weeks, the former Nationals leader has been at the centre of a parliamentary inquiry and highly damaging allegations about his $500,000 New York posting.
And it's safe to say that Jordan may have lost the battle, but had won the war. It brings us to the video titled Coronation, arguably the final act of the Bruz saga. This video details John Barilaro's new cushy role as an executive director as a property developer, and these developers' links with Sydney's criminal underworld.
Executive Director of large Sydney property development company Coronation Property Co. In August last year, we released an investigation into this developer, which detailed never-before-published links between them and one of the most violent crime organisations in all of Australian history, the Alameddine crime family, who are in no way suspects in the firebombing. No, not them. I'm sure they all have very credible alibis.
This documentary provided some incredibly damning information and had now made him the target to one of Australia's most dangerous organised crime groups. What happened next was shocking.
A fiery message that's hard to miss.
Police are tonight hunting an arsonist who targeted the home of controversial FriendlyJordies YouTube blogger Jordan Shanks.
I would hope that you would put just as much attention on the fact that that happened as you have on trying to assassinate my character over the last year. Thanks for your time.
After misfiring a week earlier and setting the neighbour's house on fire, which was extinguished swiftly, the attackers would return firebombing the house of FriendlyJordies. Jordan was returning on tour from interstate and had thankfully forgotten his house keys sleeping at a friend's house that night. With his residence without fire alarms, this incident may have costed him his life. This intention to silence Jordies once again had the Streisand effect, as the incident was reported internationally by some of the platform's biggest YouTubers, with the likes of Moist Critical and Pyrocynical reporting on the incident.
FriendlyJordies does real, meaningful journalism, one of the very few in the field that does, and he presents all of the information factually, with sources, with evidence, and delivers it in extremely entertaining ways. And for all of his hard work, his life gets threatened.
Jordan released a video Who Firebombed FriendlyJordies, summarising the events that had occurred leading to that point, and a short list of who may have been the perpetrators. This reached 4.9 million viewers, as an outpour of global support for Jordan's investigative journalism only increased his channel's stature. An associate of the organised crime family that FriendlyJordies did highlight in the coronation video would be charged for destroying and damaging property a year later, with the police believing the attack was made in response to that exact video. In fact, this was not enough, as Jordan and his team received substantial threats on their life, demanding that the video be taken down. FriendlyJordies would release this statement.
Notice that we haven't been releasing videos after the police arrested a suspect for the firebombing of my house. While we're very grateful for their persistence throughout this ordeal, we felt it would be prudent to see what the response would be from certain individuals. Now, over a year later, these figures are once again venting, threatening dire consequences if the video isn't taken down. Given these people's colourful history, we don't consider these to be idle threats. Naturally, we contacted the appropriate authorities, but it appears these men have engulfed the state in a state of fear. There is not an authority in the land powerful enough, or perhaps foolhardy enough, to check them. We have done our absolute best to keep the video up, believe me, we have. But if the content of coronation is to fall on willfully deaf ears, if its only tangible result is the death of innocent people, we will not have their lives hang on our conscience. In other words, you win. We're taking down the video. We've learned that there is a currency that is far more dependable than the dollar, and that's terror.
With he and his team receiving no help from the authorities, Jordan would have to take down this video, stating,
"Congratulations, you run this city."
Although he would obtain even more damning information, understanding the grave danger not only he but his team were facing, Jordies would disappear for 4 months before returning with the video, "I'm Alive," on April 11 of 2024. The firebombing and bruz ordeal would propel FriendlyJordies from 500,000 subscribers in 2023 to 1.2 million subscribers in 2024, becoming one of Australia's biggest YouTubers. His viewership would outrank any Australian mainstream TV program across 2023, as Jordies went from an individual that was once dismissed as an afterthought by much of the mainstream media to now having a larger audience. Jordan would start successful side projects like the FriendlyJordies podcast and his self-titled self-help channel. Whilst also having substantial followings on Facebook and Instagram, he continues to sell out his live shows across Australia. FriendlyJordies, through his persistent and critical journalism, has become public enemy #1 of the elites in Australia, but has established himself as almost an anti-hero for many viewers.
We got Jordan Shanks over here versus mainstream media. It looks like you position yourself to be the auditor of what mainstream media tell us about how politics is working for all of us, the punters.
I see myself pretty much as a voice for the worker.
His ability to make the uninteresting world of Australian politics entertaining, and his fearless reporting on corruption that many media outlets refuse to touch, has built him his devoted audience. FriendlyJordies for sure isn't perfect. Some will claim his lowbrow humour and his journalistic methods as distasteful. His variety of content makes it easy for many to dismiss his credibility. When you are dealing with a topic as divisive as politics though, there will always be critics, and it comes with the territory. Even if you don't align or agree with the content, what really can't be challenged is FriendlyJordies' integrity and impact. To continually face scrutiny from Australia's media giants, overcoming a multitude of lawsuits from the nation's elites, and navigating past the genuine threats on his life, he has shown he is unafraid and that his goal remains to provide investigative journalism to the public. He has exposed an apathetic journalistic landscape within Australia. Whilst highly paid political commentators and other Australian journalists cover culture wars from their newsrooms, Jordies has brought tens of millions of eyes to unglamorous issues like water theft and the gambling lobby out of his own personal pocket and with no real benefit to himself. It showcases a dedication to his craft, and when you think about it, who else is really doing that independently? Whether you like or dislike FriendlyJordies, you cannot deny his journey represents one of Australia's great success stories. To not only face the amount of adversity he has, but to come out on top whilst remaining independent through it all is in itself admirable. If you enjoyed this video, check out my Spaniard documentary that should be on the screen now. Don't forget to press that like button. Comment down below your thoughts on FriendlyJordies and his story. Subscribe if you're wanting more Australian sporting and culture content. If you want to support this channel financially, check out the Patreon. Thank you for watching.